Hello, okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me. And if you find yourself wanting to stick around to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about film and TV, then please hit that subscribe button, it will mean an awful lot to me. And yeah, welcome to my spoiler-free review of one of my anticipated movies of the year, and that is Lee Cronin's The Mummy, a supernatural horror written and directed by Lee Cronin and produced by Jason Blum and James Wan. And yeah, I've been really looking forward to this movie. I've been really excited for it because I just loved what Lee Cronin did with Evil Dead Rise. That is the only movie that I have experienced by Lee Cronin, but it was enough to get me excited to sort of see or witness his take on this classic monster, this classic character. So the movie follows a journalist and his family whose young daughter mysteriously disappears in the Egyptian desert. Years later, she suddenly reappears, found inside a sarcophagus, preserved like a mummy. What should be a miraculous reunion quickly turns disturbing. So yeah, been really excited for this film. I'm a big fan of the 1932 Universal movie, and I'm a big fan of the Stephen Sommers movies. You know, The Mummy from 1999 starring Brendan Fraser, and the sequel, The Mummy Returns. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the original cast return for the sequel within that franchise, within that series of movies. And as a kid growing up in the 90s, I also kind of liked the straight-to VHS, you know, trashy, gritty B-movies that came out as well, that you could only find in a rental shop. And that was kind of what I was hoping for with this. And from what I was reading, from what I was sort of getting that Lee Cronin was aiming for with his take on this classic horror monster, this classic horror creature, it felt like he was kind of honing in on sort of the horror element. Because, you know, as much as I like the Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser, they always felt more Indiana Jones with the Mummy in them. The Mummy movies with Brendan Fraser always felt more sort of straight up adventure, you know, classic adventure movies with horror sprinkled throughout them. And I always wanted something a little bit, even as a kid, you know, watching those movies directed by Stephen Sommers, I always wanted something a little bit more intense when it came to the horror. Something that took me back to those kind of the more dark, gritty B-movies from the 90s that you'd only find in the rental store. And from the glimpses that we were getting from within the trailers for Lee Cronin's The Mummy, it felt like we were going to get that. And I was really, really excited for this. Like I said, it was one of my anticipated movies of the year. So, did Lee Cronin's The Mummy give me what I really wanted? You know, was this going to be the Mummy movie, the Mummy reboot or remake that I've been wanting for years? Or was it just going to be another disappointment like Lee Whannell's Wolfman? That was another movie that I was really looking forward to, you know, with Lee Whannell doing an absolute amazing job of the Invisible Man, and then gave us the Wolfman that had a lot of interesting ideas, but just it didn't really quite come together in a way that was compelling and that just worked as a whole. So, Lee Cronin's The Mummy. There's a lot that I liked within it. I did have some fun with the movie. But unfortunately, it's another one of those movies where, and I feel like I'm sort of saying this now quite a bit, but it's a film, an experience that has a lot of really interesting ideas. It's doing some interesting things with what they are exploring thematically. Like, it's quite a dark story, and especially with what they are exploring thematically within its story, it's quite dark, and that kind of got me really intrigued. But unfortunately, all those ideas don't quite come together to give us one sort of compelling, cohesive, whole, or an experience that just swallows you up within these characters' stories, and an experience that has a weight to it. It's a film, it's an experience that did remind me quite a bit of Lee Whannell's Wolfman, though I feel like, for me, this is a slightly stronger movie. I felt like it was just a little more effective at times at what they were attempting to do than what Lee Whannell achieved within The Wolfman. But unfortunately, this was a 2-hour and 15-minute movie that just felt like it had moments that weren't connected to one another, and so it just lacked that kind of the flow, that kind of momentum and energy, that emotional current, you could say, that should be running throughout the film. It just really kind of lacked that energy to sort of just suck you in and really sort of take you on a ride. You could sort of sense and feel that that's what Lee Cronin is attempting here. You know, he's definitely attempting that, but there is just something incredibly clunky in the way in which the movie is constructed, especially during the second act and going into the third act. That's where kind of the pace really starts to stagger and sort of falter, you could say, and you could kind of feel the clunkiness in how everything was coming together. Yet I was still having, to a degree, fun, because I was, I was always intrigued and compelled by what Lee Cronin was attempting here with his take on the character. It's a different take, but it's not really that original. But this still could have been incredibly effective if he had nailed the story and its characters, and a lot of that lay within the writing for me. I feel like that's what kind of really it's one of the elements within this movie that really let it down, and that is the writing and just sort of how these characters are written, as well as the performances at times, whether that be because of the direction, I don't know. So you've got these very real human themes being explored here around grief and guilt. And there is a very compelling story to be told here, and one that kind of reflects events, within the real world, stuff that we've gone through in history. There were some really interesting ideas here, especially with the themes that they were exploring, to give us, yes, perhaps a familiar take on The Mummy, but something that had a very kind of human-driven story, and one that could really sort of swallow you up within it, and not just be a horrifying experience, not to be, not just an experience that gets under the skin, but one that just sort of really gets you emotionally involved with the stories of these characters. This is quite a tragic story, and I like that. I can see what Lee Cronin was attempting here, and it is a very tragic story, and the ingredients are there. It's all there. The ideas are there, but unfortunately, it just doesn't all quite come together as this kind of one cohesive experience that just swallows you up within it. There are moments that really show what the film could have been. Like, there's this one scene with the father, and they haven't long brought Katie back home, and she's in the bed, and he's sitting there beside her, and it's an emotional moment, and it really shows what the film could have been. But at the same time, it's the writing and even the performance in that moment that just didn't really quite work for me. Yet, there are times that I really liked what Jack Rayner, who's playing the father here of Katie, there are times that I really liked what he was doing with the character. Like, the way in which he would bring the character to life through these expressions, and just the way he would use his eyes in certain moments. He was saying so much through just how he brought the character to life through expressions and just how he held himself without really saying much. But then there would be moments then where it just didn't work for me, and that was the same for everyone, for every performance. I don't think really any character really gets an opportunity to fully come to life. Like, there is an attempt to bring these characters to life in a way where you could just sense, you can tell that Lee Cronin is trying to get us emotionally involved with these characters, to actually care for these characters, just in the way in which these characters are set up within the first 20 minutes, whether it be around a table, 8 years after the disappearance of Katie and all of that. There are clear attempts within it for them to make us get emotionally involved and immersed within this family dynamic, but it never really fully comes to life. And a lot of that is just how it was written and how it plays out. I never feel like I get a chance to breathe, really, or the film and the characters never really fully gets a chance to breathe and come to life. There are some incredibly gruesome moments, which I loved, and you've got practical effects on display. There is a bit of CGI here and there, but I love the use of practical, and this is one moment, and I think they've released it, where the mother is clipping Katie's nails. I was like, oh, and it does. The moments like that, they are so effective because it made me go, fuck, I couldn't watch. I had to turn my head away. And I loved that because the film in those moments was doing exactly what it needed to do. It was horrifying. And there are moments that do get under the skin. But again, these moments never feel quite connected to the overall experience. They just end up feeling like moments. And the third act, again, I could see what Lee Cronin is attempting, and the climax, the third act, is designed to sort of really have, I feel, this kind of emotional weight behind it, but it just felt very clunky and awkward in the way in which it sort of played out. You've got that one scene, that one shot. You do have that one shot that's in the trailers of Katie sort of coming around the banister, and I just love how the camera sort of pans, and just sort of just follows Katie as she's coming around sort of the stairway, and you sort of got the storm kind of blowing through Katie's hair, and I just love how the camera is used. And just sort of that entire moment, I just love the look of that moment, that shot. But it, as a scene, as an overall scene as a whole, it just really didn't come together to give us a moment that had that landed a punch or had any sort of weight to it. It was designed to. I could see what Lee Cronin was trying or attempting to within these moments, but yeah, nothing was really sort of gelling. Two of the biggest positives for me with this experience, two sort of elements or aspects of it that I found myself really admiring, and that is the score by Stephen McKeon. He also did Evil Dead Rise, but I'm not familiar with any other score that he's done. But I really loved what he did here with bringing this score to life, the music. It had this kind of classic feel to it, or classic vibe to it, that took me back to sort of horror movies from an era gone by. It had that kind of, the 50s, the 40s, the 30s. It had those elements to it, and it's a beautiful score. And again, the score kind of really sort of attempts to carry the movie because it's saying so much through its score and what they are attempting to bring to life here thematically. It's a gorgeous score. And then you've got the sound design. The sound design in this movie is incredible, and it is an element of the experience that did allow me to be immersed to a degree, even though I had problems with it. It's just one of those elements within the movie from a technical perspective that just allowed me to be immersed to a degree, and just does a really effective job at bringing the sort of the moments of horror to life as well, and kind of creating or instilling an eerie, creepy atmosphere within certain moments. The sound design does a lot to kind of really bring that aspect of the movie to life, along with the gorgeous score, as well as the way the camera would be used. I did like how Lee Cronin sort of used the camera in so many moments throughout this film. It has that kind of classic, kind of retro vibe about it that I just found myself really, really admiring. So I didn't hate this film. It was disappointing, but it's not an experience that I come out of hating, because there's a lot within it that I liked and appreciated and admired. Like I said, I loved the score, I loved the sound design, I loved how the camera is used, and It definitely has that kind of dark, gritty vibe that takes me back to sort of straight to VHS horror movies from the 90s and the 80s. And I couldn't help but appreciate what Lee Cronin was attempting. But unfortunately, it's how these characters are written and how the story plays out is kind of what really kind of just let the overall experience down for me. Yet I could see what they were doing, and you'd get that odd moment where it would give me goosebumps, it would give me chills, or I would get a little bit emotional because I could see what they were doing with the story and with this, in sort of telling this story with this family, this family dynamic and how they're coping after the disappearance of their daughter and then finding her again. And, there is so much there that has the potential to create something that has a weight to it. This incredibly intense and emotional weight to it. And that's what makes really effective horror stories or horror experiences, and that is the human element of its story. And if you can't quite get that right, then those moments of horror, those moments that are incredibly gruesome and graphic and gory, just become a moment that might make you flinch and go, oh, but as a whole doesn't really seem to do anything for the overall experience, doesn't sort of add anything to the overall experience because that human element of its story isn't quite coming together or working. And so this was quite a mixed bag for me. It was, like I said, a slightly stronger experience than Lee Whannell's Wolfman. I think this was just a little bit more compelling, and I just found myself sort of immersed that little bit more because I was so intrigued by what they were playing with you thematically. But as a whole, it just didn't quite come together. And when it comes to the ending, like for me personally, I felt like the movie was about to end at a certain moment, but then you get an additional, say, 3 to 4 minutes, and it felt so tacked on. It felt so like, why did we need that? You didn't need that. And it actually really made the final 5 minutes or 5-10 minutes of the movie worse as a result of having this sort of additional 3 to 4 minutes of the movie right at the end. I'm trying to be vague here because obviously this is spoiler free, but if you've seen the movie already, let me know if you agree. But there's about 3 to 4 minutes right at the end of this film, and it just didn't feel necessary, and it just really didn't need it. So yeah, I didn't hate it. I had some fun with it. There are aspects to it that I found myself admiring. I would love to watch this film again on VHS because of the vibe and the atmosphere and the feel that I feel like Lee Cronin was going for or aiming for with this movie, with this take on The Mummy. I'd love to have this on VHS. In fact, there's actually a moment in it where they are witnessing events unfold via a VHS, and it's quite a creepy moment. It's an effective moment, and I really dug it. And then something happens in that moment that kind of takes that sort of the intensity and sort of the creepiness away. I won't say what that is because it may be a slight spoiler, but there is a certain moment or element within that moment that kind of just detracted from the overall sort of effectiveness of what they were attempting. But yeah, I think I've rambled on enough now. This is definitely something that, I had fun with it. It's an experience that I will go back to because it has a lot of interest and ideas. It's not original. It's a different take on a classic horror monster, but it isn't entirely original either. But it could still have been effective if they'd nailed sort of that human story, if they had nailed what they were exploring here thematically. It's there, but it just doesn't quite come together to give us one whole kind of consistent, cohesive experience, and one that kind of just swallows you up within what they are attempting with that kind of the emotional aspect of these characters and this family, with what they are going through, this guilt and this grief. And so, yeah, there was just so much potential there, but it just doesn't fully come to life, you could say. So yeah, I think I've rambled on enough now. they are my thoughts on Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and I would be giving Lee Cronin's The Mummy So yeah, they are my thoughts on Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I am a little late catching it. I do apologise. I was hoping to have had a review up for this at the beginning of the week, but I just got behind with other things, and yeah, I didn't catch the film until last night. I've been really looking forward to it, and it's definitely a movie that I would say I would recommend you just check out. If it's something that you were looking forward to, you just love horror movies in general, then, you know, check it out. And if you're looking for something that's just, you know, you want to be grossed out and something that's incredibly gruesome and bloody and gory and are not really interested in sort of the deeper aspects of its story, then this is definitely something that you may end up really enjoying. But let me know below, is there anything that you would disagree or agree with what I said? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And remember, if you want to watch future movie reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit that subscribe button. It would mean an awful lot to me. And I just want to apologise again. You know, I have been a little late when it comes to releasing content or movie reviews for the most recent cinema releases. Work has been quite hectic lately, but that should stabilise very soon. And I got a lot of plans. I got a lot of ideas that I want to do with the channel, especially when it comes to live content or live streaming. That is something that I'm going to be doing a hell of a lot more of. I've currently got 2 live videos up on the channel. If you want to check them out, I'll leave a link below. And just another massive thank you to everyone that is supporting the channel, whether that be liking, commenting, subscribing. It means the world to me, and it will always overwhelm me that so many of you already do want to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about film and TV. So yeah, that's it from me for now, guys. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll be catching you guys soon.